Welcome to Manager Tools. Today's cast, the basics of measures, Chapter 1. The questions this cast answers are, what are the general rules of measurement in organizations? What measures should be reported? And what do I do if measures contradict one another? If you want answers to these questions and more, keep listening.
Folks, if you're in the middle of budget planning for next year, or even if you've submitted your budget already, you may want to be thinking about preparing your managers and other professionals with the kind of tools and knowledge to drive results from retention, retention is going to be a big issue in the next 6 months as we all go back to work and discover whether we want to go back to work or not. Perhaps you've heard of the Great Resignation. Maggie, our business development associate, is talking with many clients now about the first half, Q1 and Q2 of 2022. And she would love to be able to share the options with you. There's so many ways you can do it in terms of how to deliver training on-site or virtual, licensing, video. There's an array of solutions, which we built because that's what we would have wanted if we were you. And we hope you'll take advantage of it. So reach out to Maggie at manager-tools.com.
So today we're focusing on something very near and dear to our hearts because we love to tell people how the things that get measured are the things that get done.
Yeah, how many times have you heard that one?
From us, it's like one of our mantras.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go, I think, just kind of a step further with it this time, right? And really help people have an understanding about measurements. I guess, it's silly, to call it our mantra because it is probably, it's been called the greatest management principle in the world. And there's a solid claim there. So we're just going to take it a step further today. And we're going to talk about the fact that in order to really measure, there's 4 things to focus on. No measure is not reported. Unreported measures are a waste and we should eliminate them. Often measures contradict each other, and that's normal. And transitory measures work and then must be killed.
Absolutely. We're actually going to be quite murderous in today's podcast. We're going to recommend you kill all of the things that are not of value.
I feel like I've been spending a lot of time talking about murder lately.
I know, right? Nothing wrong with a little bit of killing of useless measures within your organization.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So let us start with the first point. No measure is not reported. There's no measure that's not reported. It seems simple. It's so fundamental to the measuring of our work, our people, our organizations. It gets easily missed. And once you understand it, you'll be much more likely to get the full value from the measures within your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to boil it down, what that means is if you don't report a measure, it's not a measurement.
Right.
There's no measurement that has any value unless it's known to somebody else within the organization. What good is a measure that technically exists, but nobody knows what it is or what to do with it? And if nobody knows what a measurement is or says, it's completely useless. Actually, I'd go so far as to say it's worse than useless.
It's really bad, right?
It's really bad.
It's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an example of why reporting of measurements matter. Imagine you use a yardstick to measure something, but it doesn't have any divisions or indicators of length on it, or the indicators are covered, and maybe they're even in a numerical language that you don't understand. And suddenly what you realize is, I used the yardstick and it didn't tell me anything. Fun.
It's fun.
And that's key.
Useful. Mm-hmm.
That yardstick didn't tell you anything.
Nothing.
To measure something is to inherently want to know.
Right.
We're monitoring because we want to know. We're checking.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you don't learn anything from the measure, have you really measured it?
Yeah, exactly. Totally. You
Futile.
truly haven't. Exactly. Another analogy that might be beneficial to our regular listeners, as it's something that's come up in previous popular podcasts, is the adage, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Now, There are plenty of engineers in this community who would then answer, well, of course it makes a sound because there's sound waves, which is inevitable if a tree falls. And you wouldn't be wrong, but the whole point of such Zen koans is not to teach reason, but to foster enlightenment. And most folks don't realize that koans are not just thinking exercises, they actually have a right answer.
I think especially this one, it's been said so many times that people it's used more as a phrase than
Right.
a koan. And the right answer here to our tree, which has fallen in the forest, is no, it doesn't make a sound. But why? Right? Okay. Because sound is perception, not just waves, not just sound waves. And hey, if it doesn't make any sense, that's okay. And it's true.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate that we're not Buddhist monks or we could teach this to you.
I know. We're totally not that. We're not always Zen. We're not always Zen.
We genuinely started this cast by saying something about murder.
A lot about murder.
I think it's on the opposite. We're on the opposite spectrum.
Yeah, it's true. Believe us. We can't teach you why.
Yeah.
Now, all that said, how does that tie back to our discussion on measures? Because measures tell us something. Unreported measures don't tell us something. So they don't tell us something. They aren't actually measures at all. The simple lesson then for all professionals is that when we create measures, we must create the reporting of the measures at the same time. Else, we haven't a measure at all.
Yeah. This isn't really to say that the systems you have in place that are keeping track of things aren't useful. They can be.
Totally. Absolutely.
The problem, though, is that the measure existing in a vacuum isn't useful or helpful to your productivity. Even if you've got a system that monitors all these things and
Absolutely.
it's sitting out there, you could go get it if you wanted to. It's in the ether, right? You're not putting it in a place where it's useful to you. So some of the more technical among us would say, well, our systems have all the data. And that's
they have all the data.
super true.
Right. And important. It's great that we have the data, insofar as the capturing of the data isn't burdensome to system performance. Data capture is good.
Sure. We don't want it to be difficult to do, right? It needs to be something
Right.
that's not requiring a bunch of people to do it.
Exactly. But data capture is not measurement. It's capture.
Right. It's like having all of your photos saved in a folder and then you never look at them.
And you never look at them. They're there. Great. But they're just there.
Yeah. No one's looking at them. Not helpful.
No one's looking at them. Not helpful.
Where you'll often find this happening, this, data being captured but not shared or used or whatever, is the business asking technical people, hey, do we have data on this? And the systems people, the tech guys will say, yeah. And when the business side asks, okay, can I please have it? The systems guys say, well, we have to go get it. They'll have to write a script or they'll have to query the database or figure out in what form the data currently exists and how we can get it in a useful way if we need a different format, things like that.
It's there. It's stuck in some sort of system.
Right.
We can't just show it to you. It's going to take us some time.
Yeah.
And that really basic example reminds us that data is not measurement. The data, again, we said this, the data is necessary, but don't fall prey to the belief that if you have the data somewhere, you're halfway there.
Yeah, no way.
No, you're not even a third of the way there. In fact, you may never actually get all the way there.
Yeah, database stuff, all that stuff it's hard.
Yeah, it's not trivial. Otherwise, the business would find the data themselves.
Right? Oh my gosh. Can you imagine if we tried to go looking for something ourselves?
Totally.
I have a feeling our IT people would say, please don't muck around in there.
Stop touching it. Stop touching the stuff. Stop touching our stuff.
Don't come over here.
Exactly. That's the thing. Because a database query to get this information, this data that you're looking for, could take a week. Not
Yeah.
because it actually takes that long, but there's other priorities for the systems folks. Ultimately, at the end of the day, no, all the data in the world buried in systems that requires experts to unearth it. And even when they do, it's still only data, not information, let alone measurement, which again is necessary, but not entirely sufficient. And it's not information. It's definitely not a measure.
Right. All the data in the world is not going to save us if we can't get to it. And you can't
Again,
use it.
great that we have it. Great that we have it. I can't say that enough times. It's just not helpful yet.
Right. And this isn't a screed against the difficulty of getting at the data in our systems.
This isn't our diatribe about how difficult it is to get data, Kate?
I mean, I suppose,
Okay.
we're not
a little bit, maybe a little, a
we're-
small bit. Okay.
we're
fair.
edging past that.
Yeah, reasonable.
Yeah.
Even if there is a regular database query, which outputs in a format that you'd actually find useful, it's not a measurement unless it's communicated to those folks for whom the measurement itself actually matters. And that communication, the communication itself, is what makes data a measure. We hear all the time, manners maketh the man, and communications maketh the measures. No one knows about them.
I'm glad you said that and I didn't have to try to enunciate all that.
Enunciate all that. I don't know that I did very well, but
I think you did.
y'all get it. Y'all get it. You know what I mean.
Next time you're thinking about measuring something, remember our new mantra. And if it's worth doing, it's worth measuring.
Mhm.
Don't be satisfied with the data or even the information. Figure out how and when and where you want to see it and build all of that into your effort or product or service.
Yes, exactly.
Start with the idea that you'll need it and that it should be consumable.
All right. That takes us to the next point then of discussion. Unreported measures are a waste. Eliminate them. Now, I think this point is quick. It's simple. And since no one out there listening, and y'all can write in an email and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to guess that no one out there is twiddling their thumbs at work or looking for more useful things to do more often.
We're hopeful.
We're hopeful. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But it's truly really simple. If a measure isn't a measure without reporting, then unreported measures aren't measures at all. It's the tree falling in the forest, but not making a sound
There we go.
all over again.
Yeah.
And if the measure takes some work of some sort, but it's not reported, it's not going to be used. No one's going to use it. And therefore, it's useless. We can all agree that things that take work that aren't valuable get killed,
Oh, they should.
right?
Yeah, I think we can agree on the point. I'm just thinking of situations I've been in where there was stuff that was happening that just wasn't it's just wasteful.
Yeah, it's just wasteful.
I think we agree that the idea that if it's not getting used, it should get killed is something that's valuable, right? Because it's just waste.
Right.
I just don't know that that's what everyone's situation is. I think a lot of organizations, they have stuff like this that's happening that isn't actually very useful. I remember when I first started, I was just telling this story this week, actually. I was at NAPIDE in Quincy, and we're talking about delegating things to the floor. And when I very, very first started here, there was this report that I was supposed to put out every week.
Oh my gosh, I have a couple of those too. Yeah.
I now remember putting it out every week. It was really simple. It took 5 minutes. It was not hard at all.
Yeah.
It wasn't taking up a ton of my time. And I noticed no one ever mentioned the report to me. Not once.
Yeah.
After I was told to do it, it was never brought up to me. And in fact, one week I messed it up and I didn't realize until later. Like I didn't save it as Excel, so none of the formatting when it was in the folder.
Oh, it was like a CSV to Excel kind of thing.
100%.
We're super techie over here.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I said something to these guys about like, I don't even know what you'd use a CSV for.
Oof.
It was meant to be part
I agree, but I
like-
feel like
Oh, you should have seen their eyes
some
light
people
up.
do know.
Oh, I had 4 or 5 guys in the audience. I was like, hold on. I don't need you to tell me.
Right? Okay.
Because you could see them immediately perk up. I could share this. I could share this answer with you, Kate, really easily. Like, I'll share it with you.
No, I don't want to know.
I don't want. I'm not interested. And so I remember messing it up and realizing, hey, nobody even noticed that I messed it up.
No.
And so I figured, hey, you know what? Maybe nobody's looking at it. I'll just not do it next week and see what happens. And I've been not doing it this week for 5 years.
Yeah.
And nobody noticed.
Right?
So that's useless. That's a waste
Yeah.
of resources in the organization, and it should have been murdered. Now, I took a little autonomy. I'm not suggesting if you're listening to this that it's always going to be safe. There's a
Right?
risk there for eliminating work. And hey, good news. If that report only took 5 minutes. So if someone had come in and said, yo, we really need that. What are you doing? I could do it in 5 minutes. We could have it. Right. So,
Yeah. This reminds me a lot of the 95% Solution podcast, actually. If you're looking for 5% back in your day, that's where you find it. You find it in the reports that no one's reading, that you're creating, and try an experiment. Do a Kate. Pull a Kate. We're going to call it that from now on.
Don't do your work.
Make a purposeful mistake next time. Just make an on-purpose mistake in it. If no one says anything, think about death of the report.
Yeah. And a really good way that I've historically found to kind of like see if like, or a way to evaluate that stuff. So I'm going to assume that there's a lot of people listening who are not as comfortable with risk as I am, and that your reports take more than 5 minutes. So one other way that I've found to do this is look at the list of stuff that you do, and then look at, if I was going to go on vacation, is there anything on this list that I wouldn't assign to somebody else?
Oh, that's such a good one. We would just skip it.
Right. Like
for those few weeks.
We'll just skip it. If you were going to be on vacation for 2 weeks and this thing could just be skipped, maybe it's not that valuable and you should be asking around about, do we need this? It's worked really well for me in the past. That, I guess it's like it's like a little acid test, maybe. So if you find things like this, eliminate them. I mean, imagine one less thing to do each week.
Right?
Does that sound nice? It sounds great.
Exactly.
I think it sounds great.
Me too.
Hey, folks, we have a couple of remaining training events this year. On the 1st of December, we have a virtual effective remote manager session. On the 2nd of December, we have a virtual effective communicator conference. On the 6th of December, we have virtual effective manager conference that still has some slots. And on the 7th, we have a virtual effective manager conference session, but that one is full. And I'm sorry about that. We're trying to keep up with the demand and we're running a little bit behind. So if you're interested in effective remote manager, effective communicator, or effective manager conference, there are still opportunities to attend. Please come to the website and sign up. Thanks.
So next, measures often contradict each other, and that's totally normal.
Absolutely.
And if we don't elaborate, that just sounds weird, right?
Yeah, it totally does.
Sounds crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It really is normal for there to be multiple measures around a system or a project or an initiative. And those measures are often in tension with one another. The most classic example, and something that we encounter often with our conferences, is the revenue and cost measures. Now, simplistically, we could focus only on costs and reduce them. But some costs actually lead to revenue. If costs went all the way down to zero, revenue would plummet.
Right. Travel, hotel, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. There's some things that we do that encourage people to attend conferences. You can't drive profit up just by eliminating cost.
It's a balance, right? It's a balance.
It totally is.
And when you realize that, when you think that through in terms of, that's a really simple, but I feel like really powerful example. If a presenter doesn't travel to the event,
Right.
no revenue. If we don't have a hotel that's near to people, no revenue. Even if the hotel was really bad, that would be, man, I was in some interesting hotels in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I
That was
believe it.
One of the hotels I went to, it wasn't really a hotel, but one of the places I went, they didn't have a key to my room. And so I just
Yeah.
went in
Sleep-
and out like as I please. Yeah, it's cool. So
Terrifying.
it's a little terrifying. It's a little intense.
Yeah.
If you think about this, back to the conference example, some expenses contribute to whether or not we make money at the events.
Absolutely.
Realizing that, then that helps us really to realize that our measures matter.
Hmm.
Of course, what this does is cause a lot of professionals, many professionals, to want everything to be measured.
Absolutely. Why not measure everything then?
Yeah.
Everything matters, doesn't it?
All so important. And of course, we want those measurements, or the people who want those measurements want them to be precise and narrow as possible. The thing is, when we do that, then we're creating other costs, labor and time.
Yeah.
And just in creating the reports, right? We're creating costs, which is interesting. And the time analyzing them also creates
Yeah,
more costs.
Absolutely.
It takes skill and time to learn how to tease out what costs are necessary and which can be cut in ways that aren't harmful to revenue. I mean, we do this every couple of years. We look at everything top to bottom, and there's still some things, and we cut a lot. I mean, you probably remember, maybe
Oh. Are you going to talk about warm breakfast?
no.
Because I'm still not over it. Okay.
You just miss eggs.
I know. You guys, if you don't know me, I love a scrambled hotel egg. I know it came from a carton. Don't tell me where it came from. Delicious.
She loves them. We had a big conversation 2 weeks ago.
Huge.
We were in person, and we spent 10 of our in-person minutes talking about the quality of the scrambled eggs.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that we cut.
Yeah.
Because we didn't deem it to be one of those things that caused people to come to our conferences, is because, hey, there's hotel scrambled eggs. The presenter loves it, but no one else thinks it's important.
Just as a note, you have a person who you could ask to order you breakfast.
I know, but then that's a cost, Kate.
I don't think one Sarah breakfast is going to kill us.
Don't need to bear.
No, so I wasn't thinking about eggs.
Okay, sorry. I apologize. It took us off
No
track.
one thinks about hotel eggs as much as you. I was thinking about name badges.
Name badges.
Like, we
Okay.
used to ship in tubs.
Oh,
we used to
we
ship
did.
them. We used to ship name badges. We used to ship all kinds of stuff that we don't ship anymore.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we ship projectors, which I don't think everybody thinks is something that we would ship, but we do.
Mhm. But we
which
do.
We do. We do it a lot. It's way cheaper. And that's not something that you would just naturally understand. It does. It takes skill, time, it takes understanding.
Right. It takes time. Exactly. It takes time to assess all of that data.
And that's a cost.
It's a cost. It's absolutely a cost.
Another classic example is speed and quality. Speeding up
Yeah.
production can produce more output. But the question then is, at what cost to quality?
Yeah.
How do you determine how many things to measure with reporting without creating burdensome analysis of how the system works, right? The conflicting measures are often necessary for us to understand.
Yeah.
So don't just measure the one thing you want. The goal is to measure and report on enough to understand, but not so much that you create waste, as we talked about. Because we don't want to do that. Because then we would have to kill it. And then if we
Right.
just made it, then we have to kill it. You shouldn't just make stuff to kill it.
Exactly. I agree. Yes. that.
Yeah. Speaking of murder.
Speaking of murder, that takes us to the last piece of today's guidance. Transitory measures work, but must be killed.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
projects and systems that exist for a limited time period need measurements too, right?
Yes.
Good. And just like government programs, measurements are hard to kill,
Yeah.
which is how you end up with things that need to be killed.
Right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
After projects or systems installations are long since complete, measures that we created to track our progress will still exist. What that means then is to avoid the work of measuring and reporting ultimately at the end of the project, what have you, on already completed work, we need to plan for the sunsetting of project-based measurements at the start of the project itself.
Mm-hmm. And I think for most people, that means setting reminders of the measures and their associated reporting that you are going to eliminate on completion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'm just thinking of all the Google Sheets I have sitting out there that we no longer need. Prestwick
don't
Google
remind
tracking.
me. So much stuff. I have so many
Yeah.
of those things. I actually took note the other day that I need to go kill one. That's good. But you're right. There's many things out there. Thank you, Google, for making all of your sheets free because I got so much things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And for
absolutely.
the size of the cloud.
I know. How big is this cloud? All right. So we suggest you make the elimination of those, by definition, temporary measures, a deliverable at the end of your project. And don't be surprised if there are going to be those people, there always will, who want to continue just having them available because you never know. We might need it. But
Drunk on measurement.
drunk on measurement. That kind of conjecture is always true. But the moment you stop reviewing the reporting, we then revert back to our very first rule. A measure without reporting isn't a measure. It's only a cost.
Mm-hmm.
It's friction against productivity and worthy of a quick and efficient death.
Oh, I guess murder's not quick or efficient probably always, so
Not always. Sometimes. Depends
can't
on the
really
day.
call it murder. I did see that there's that show Dexter is back.
I heard that.
The people on the plane next to me were watching it this morning.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty quick and efficient.
Yeah, well, if you're Dexter, most of us are not the Dexter of our own organizations, though. Take some
Yeah, we should be more Dexter in our organizations. Good. Hopefully I can replace the idea of calling it a Kate with calling it a Dexter.
time. Okay. All right. We'll see. But yeah, I like that. We'll call it a Dexter. All right.
Okay. This is only chapter 1 about measures. We're only addressing basic tenets here. Measuring work matters, and just having the data isn't enough. Measures without reporting aren't measures. They're simply data. Build your reporting of measures into the measures themselves, and be willing to kill measures that are reported, but were either intended to be temporary or have otherwise outlived their usefulness. The old saying, necessary and sufficient, learned over time, is the way to approach creating measurements and their reporting.
You bet.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, everyone. That's it for this week. Have a good one.
Bye, y'all.